Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you all very, very much for being here to say goodbye to my father. And I just want to take a moment to thank my aunt very much for being a tower of strength. When you were a little girl, your big brother was there to look out for you. As you got older, you were there to look out for your big brother. Even though my heart feels as if it wants to break, I am comforted by the fact that my father would not have wanted us to come here to mourn his death, but to celebrate his life. And so I will try to approach this eulogy in the same spirit I know he would have wanted. A spirit of respect, with humor, and most of all, with love. Veron Nembhard was born November 23rd, 1940. And it is probably no coincidence that the year and month of his birth was a monumental one in global affairs. The world had been at war for a year, and the American people were nervous that the war would drag them into it as well. But when they learned that my father's birth was imminent, the American people's confidence grew so strong that they elected President Roosevelt to an unprecedented third term. The martial artist and actor Bruce Lee, when learning that the world would be a better place, decided that it was time to come out and was born 4 days later. My grandfather, Arthur Nembhard, who was a sporting man, had a desire to manage his own volleyball team, and so went on to give my father 6 wonderful siblings: Sarant, Ella, Cherry, Looney, Guy, and Leon. Unfortunately, none of them had any sporting talent whatsoever. And so my grandfather had to continue working for a living. The need for an education was impressed on my father from a very early age. And so as soon as he was able to walk, my grandfather picked him up, pointed him towards the Ballards Valley School, and gave him a shove. Now this school, I believe, must have been on top of the Blue Mountain Peak, because every story my father told involved him either walking to school or walking back from school. And the journey just grew longer every time. So if memory serves correctly, my dad had to walk 10 miles to get to school in the morning and 20 miles to get back home in the evening. He excelled at reading and math and had a prodigious memory. One of his favorite stories was H.G. Wells's The Country of the Blind, of which he would quote us passages from time to time. And this helped spark my love of reading, and he, along with my wonderful mother, did everything to encourage that. So my dad grew up at a tremendous time for Jamaica, and he met several of the great men of the time, like Donald Sangster, B.B. Coke, Bustamante, from whom he would often receive a ride while walking home from school. And he would discuss matters with these great men. They would ask his opinion, and he would give it, as he would tell me. I was just talking what the elders would say, but they all thought I was very smart. By this time, the Second World War had ended, and Great Britain and Europe were rebuilding. The call went for Jamaicans to go to the mother country to help rebuild it. And my dad answered the call, and in 1958 left for London. He was in for quite a surprise. London was a cold, clustered, dreary place, especially for someone who had been used to the open, dry, comfortable climes of St. Elizabeth. Still, he made do. He got a job, started college, and it wasn't long before one of his brothers and several of his cousins were also in the country. And so London no longer seemed such a bad place after all. Things improved even more when one day, while visiting a cousin, he was pleased to meet a pretty young lady who he was told was from South Africa. And here is where that prodigious memory I told you about was to play a monumental part in the birth of both myself and my brother. Upon meeting this lady, my father said, "Sawabona, unjani," which means, "Hello, how are you?" "Nigifila, nigibona." "I am well, thanks," she replied. "Ukuhulumwa, isi Zulu." "So you speak Zulu?" That's what she asked him. And the answer is no. My father did not speak any Zulu. In fact, outside of Patois and English, my father knew no other languages. What had happened was a British missionary worker who had been in Jamaica at that time, visiting Ballards Valley Primary School, had been stationed in South Africa before and had taught the kids a few words of Zulu, which my father had memorized, and which years later he would use as an icebreaker to meet my mother. Luckily, my dad's cousin interrupted before my dad's Zulu skills ran out. And so they spent the rest of the time conversing in English. With that little phrase, my dad began the courtship of this pretty young lady. And somehow, against her better judgment, I'm sure, she succumbed to his charms, and not long after, they got married. To witness the birth of his first child. He nodded sagaciously, and a look passed between him and my mother. The look said, "Baby's not bad as far as babies go, but maybe we can do better." So it was during this time that my father decided it's time to go back to warmer climes. So they made plans to go back to Jamaica, and he quickly landed a job from the government. Roaches in Jamaica, my mother asked my father as they packed their things. My father, and with that, they set sail, or in this case, set flight for sunny Jamaica, the land of teeny tiny roaches. My parents quickly found a place in Montego Bay where he was joined by his baby sister Leon. Any fears that there might be friction between my mother and a sister-in-law were soon put to bed. Their happy home was because 2 years later, they would receive such a gift of such incredible value that words cannot even express how lucky my parents were. And if you haven't guessed yet, that present was me. It was December 20th, 1975. Thoughts of the holiday were temporarily put on hold by everyone in Jamaica, as the anticipation of my to go on vacation. But when he learned my mother was due, he gave up any plans just so he could have the privilege of delivering me. My father, who conveniently worked in the same place his wife was going to give birth, still wasted no time rushing to the delivery room. Then the moment arrived, my birth. The doctor and nurses, with tears of joy in their eyes, brought the baby over to my father to see. A look flashed between my parents. The doctor said, "Mr. Nembhard, you struck gold with this one. You and your wife don't need to try anymore." The nurses all agreed. They all stood around realizing that the baby delivered after this nothing could match the spectacle, and the doctor promptly resigned. Growing up with my father was a wonderful thing. He was a man of great humor and regular habits, so much so you could almost set the time by him. He left for work promptly every morning, came home for lunch, and at 5:15 in the evening, from our living room, rumbling along as he turned the corner onto our street. And he knew Dad was home. Everything was fine. As you probably guessed, Dad lived close to his job. Our house was about a mile away from Cornell Regional Hospital. So you can imagine his surprise one day when driving home from work on an errand Hill, his book bag in tow. Now, to give you some context, Jay was probably about intelligence and extremely strong. Pulling over, my father wound down his window and inquired politely, "Where are you going?" "Home," my brother told him. My father couldn't help but ask, "Why?" To which my brother told him quite for some strange reason, my brother found it easier to say the word elephant than the word infant. The next brother at the infant school, my father quietly parked around the corner, chose an unobtrusive spot to hide, and patiently waited, watching the entrance to the school. And sure enough, within minutes, there was my brother. That settled it. Realizing that nothing short of tying my brother up was going to a few like-minded parents and a boycott. Together, they created a new school, Hemingway Prep, a school which my brother deemed agreeable and which both he and I soon excelled at. But that was my father. There was no problem that was insurmountable, no challenge that a solution couldn't be found for. That was one of the many wonderful things about him. He was always there when we needed him. And outside of the few occasions he was away on business trips, I cannot recall a time when my father wasn't with his family. My dad was a man who strongly believed in keeping your word. His word was his bond. And you can rest assured that if he promised to do something, you could consider it as good as done. But at the same time, he was also a man who expected the same of others. If you gave him his word, you better have a good explanation as to why you didn't. But that isn't to say he didn't believe in second chances, questionable incidents in the past, but he would let them know, "I'm taking a chance on you. Don't let me down." But you better believe he was keeping a close watch, and if he saw any funny business, he'd fire them quicker than he hired them. But if they had reformed and were pulling their weight, then he would give them as much trust as they earned. You have as much rope needed to feel free, but the rope was always there that he could tug you back in if he thought you had gone too far. As you can imagine, growing up with such a man instilled a great sense of trust, community, family, and love in my brother and I. All that we are today was a result of the love and guidance of those two wonderful human beings we call our parents. Fate sadly robbed my father of his beloved wife, just as it would rob my brother and I of my father in 2025. My father loved her dearly and missed her passing with a terrible longing. A lot of the light went out of his life with her death. And while he stayed for us, his children, I know he would have longed to have been reunited with her. And it is with this that I conclude. I know that the world itself became a brighter place because of the 85 years he spent here with us. Man, freshly, he's walking around whispering a phrase over and over to himself, so he won't forget it. As he goes about looking for a pretty young girl from South Africa, to whom we will say, "Nigafunda, Nigifuna, Uchitka." Spend the rest of my life with you. Thank you.